I'd like to call this meeting to order.
The time is 4:31 p.m. Commissioners present are President Wardell Garajushi, Commissioners Mall, Dunning, Lee, Wolf, and Wong, and Commissioner Ono is excused.
Thank you, Ms. Blackman. I'd like to welcome everyone to this October 17th meeting of the San Francisco Public Library Commission. We have an agenda back there for you to pick up with 5 items this evening, as well as with accompanying materials. And so if you haven't already gotten those things, we encourage you to do so. And we're going to begin our agenda today with general public comment.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and others. I'm Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. For those in the room and for yourselves, these sessions remind me of a program that was on the radio when I was a kid called Make Believe Ballroom. And this is Make Believe Democracy. The Library Commission is expert at ignoring and spinning information no matter how it comes to them in order to make an outcome that they wish as a result. I was just reading the minutes of the last meeting, and 3 times the library has omitted from the minutes the fact that ACLU of Northern California and Electronic Frontier Foundation, very important and serious organizations, which I quoted 3 times on 3 different occasions, were completely left out of the minutes. I want to talk about 3 things, key things that have happened recently that have not been discussed in any way at the Library Commission at all, and this is supposed to be the policy setting body for the library. First of all, mailed printed notices have been essentially stopped, except apparently, maybe, for lost materials. I received, and others have received, a very peremptory letter saying, this is the last mailed notice you will get. There wasn't even a suggestion of how alternately to get information other than to go to the library or look on the website. For those who don't have easy access or any access to the web, and we've heard that tens of thousands, 100,000 people, according to SF Weekly, don't have high-speed internet access in San Francisco. There's a whole series of burdens to which you're subjecting to people if they do want notification by phone or by email. And there are very serious privacy threats that you're throwing people into without any warning and without any preparation and without any way of minimizing or eliminating those. Second, today's Chronicle talks about something that has happened. Nobody has discussed it here, the Maya Angelou artwork, which was discussed previously, but its rejection at the Art Commission, not a word, not on the agenda. That happened, as I understand it, from today's Examiner in August. Finally, there are some serious issues with safety at the library. Nothing in the papers that I saw, certainly nothing on the agenda. Somebody committed suicide by jumping from a floor into the atrium, and there are going to be apparently changes to prevent that from happening again. That needs to be openly discussed at the Library Commission.
Further public comment?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Nick Pasquariello. I've been using the San Francisco Public Library for over half a century, and I believe you are about to implement, or you are implementing, arguably the worst policy change I've ever seen in that half century of using the library. The library will no longer mail to 100,000 San Franciscans pickup notices of library materials being held at branches. No rational explanation has been given for this change of long-standing effective library policy. I'm one of 100,000 more than 100,000 San Franciscans who do not have internet access in their homes.
Thank you.
In a new, unprecedented gutting of long-standing library policy, all 100,000 of us are being unfairly and probably illegally discriminated against in violation of library policy and state law in the borrowing of library materials. This new policy exacerbates San Francisco's digital divide. Why? Because it served the mandatory practice of the library to serve, it violates the mandatory practice of the library to serve all patrons with access to all library materials and services. To quote the California Library Services Act, the legislature finds and declares that it is in the interest of the people of the state to ensure that all people have free and convenient access to all library resources and services that might enrich their lives regardless of where they live or of the tax base of their local government. This finding is based in part on the quote, Section C of that law, the effective sharing of resources and services among the libraries of California that requires an ongoing commitment to the state to promote access to information in both print and digital format. Why was this major change in library borrowing policy never brought before the Library Commission to discuss its impact on San Francisco's most vulnerable, low-income, and senior population? It's obvious that library staff did not think through all of the negative repercussions and effects this new policy would have on 100,000 San Franciscans. Or is it yet another attempt to foist on San Francisco pro-gentrification policies that makes it harder for all but the ultra-rich to live here? Probably for the same reason that library patrons were not given any warning that this implementation of working library borrowing practice would be implemented without explanation or justification. I resent the fact that the only formal notice I received was after the fact that the policy was set in place in a poorly worded, unsigned, anonymous letter on San Francisco Public Library letterhead. So I urge this commission to revert to the longstanding, effective working policy of sending paper notices in the U.S. mail to all patrons who desire that.
Thank you. Further public comment? Okay, seeing that there is none, we're going to move on to our item number 2 on our agenda, which is the Ocean View Library Site Feasibility Report. This is a presentation on the Ocean View Branch Library's feasibility information, and the commission will have a discussion after the presentation is finished.
Thank you, President Wardell. I am going to wait just a moment until we can get the clicker to advance the slides. Oh, it's over there. All right, now we're ready. Thank you, President Wardell. Good evening, commissioners. Library staff appreciates this opportunity to share a progress report on the Ocean View Branch Library capital project. You may recall the Ocean View Branch Library was originally identified as one of 3 branch libraries to be considered for a major renovation, and this was the result of recommendations in the branch capital project's feasibility study that was released in early 2018. During the February 1, 2018 Library Commission meeting, the Commission approved the budget that enabled continued planning for the Ocean View Branch Library project. Since that time, the library has worked closely with our partners from Public Works to continue a design process and engage the residents of the Ocean View neighborhood in an effort to inform next steps for the future of the Ocean View Branch Library. Tonight's report from Public Works marks another critical milestone in the project. We have Project Andy Sohn and Senior Project Architect Lourdes Garcia in attendance this evening. Andy will be sharing the results of the site feasibility report. We may also have the Office of District 11 Supervisor Sofia attending this evening. But our Chief of Branches, Kathy Del Neo, supported drafting this report, and she will co-present. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Kathy.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening, Commissioners, and thank you for this opportunity to share the Ocean View Library Site Feasibility Report. There it goes. Is there a well, I'm trying. Pardon me while I struggle with this technology. Hold on. There it goes. I wasn't expecting them to do that, so I'm going to bring them all out, and then I will get started. Here we go. Okay, as Michael was just sharing, Public Works published a branch capital projects feasibility study in early 2018, which focused on the needs for improvements at the Ocean View, Chinatown, and Mission branches. With regards to the Ocean View branch, the findings were that the overall size of the branch is too small to meet current community needs. The program room is very small and inflexible. The building is not easily recognizable as a library from the street. The teen area at the branch is inadequate. The public service areas are difficult for staff to oversee, and the current site limits renovation or expansion. The library has conducted a series of engagements with the Ocean View community, including conversations with community leaders, surveys of community members, and a series of 3 community meetings that took place in February and March 2018. Through these engagements, Ocean View residents have shared feedback that reinforces the conclusions of the Branch Capital Project's feasibility study, specifically that the branch is small with limited space for physical collections, that it lacks adequate seats and study tables, that it does not have a well-defined area for our teenage patrons, that it lacks space for individual or group quiet study, and that while the branch does have a meeting room, that meeting room is not able to accommodate groups that are large for public programs or community meetings. During the community engagement process, Ocean View residents expressed serious reservations about the efficacy of renovating the existing building as a means to address their community's needs for library service. They voiced their desire to relocate the Ocean View branch on another parcel in their neighborhood that would accommodate a larger facility that is better able to serve their area's growing population. In response to this community feedback, the Library commissioned a site feasibility report through the Department of Public Works to explore options for the construction of a new branch on city-owned property on Brotherhood Way, as identified by the Office of Supervisor Sofia. My colleague Andy Sohn, an architect with Public Works, will now share the results of the Ocean View Library Site Feasibility Report. There they are. There we go. Andy?
Maybe I'll get it right. I'm Andy Sohn, architect at Public Works. All right, where do I point this? Oh. Okay. I don't know. Sue, any idea where I point this? Nothing's happening.
Thwarted by technology. Got help behind you. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course. Okay, all right. Okay, hi, I'm Andy Sohn, architect at Public Works. I'd like to thank our team of landscape architects and architects back at the office and Kathy for contributions to the report. The site feasibility study is the initial steps in project development to see what a building site will accommodate and to help establish the initial project budgets. It's obviously very complicated and a lot more than that, but I mean, essentially that's what we were doing. We were studying various sites to accommodate a prototypical building program. We were here in July. And at that time, we talked about doing an initial site study at Brotherhood and Head Streets Mini Park on one single site. And then, there it goes. And then, since then, we were asked to explore additional sites in the same Brotherhood Way open space. So there, on the screen are the location of the study sites down on the south of the city. You can see the city limits. And the green areas represent open space, public open space in the city, and our site is on public open space. It's fairly unique in that it's in the crossroads and the fork in the road between the two major highways in the city, the Junipero-Serra Highway 1 going north and the 280 freeway going south. And it's actually on a connecting roadway between those roads. So here's a zoomed-in view. You can see Lake Merced to the left, the existing branch library there, and our study sites on the Brotherhood Way right there. The circles indicate other branch libraries in the area. The circle is a 1/2 mile radius, or a mile diameter, a 1/2 mile being the approximate distance for comfortable walking to a branch. Okay, now it's going too much. I don't know, I think this thing is not so. There it is. So zooming in again, this slide is about neighborhood and site connectivity. This shows an overview of the OMI neighborhood, Ocean View, Merced Heights, Ingleside, and the connection to elementary schools, Minnie-Lovey. The dashed orange is our connecting streets, either with transit or walkable streets. The green are the study sites, and you can see the significance of the roadways in this particular area. We ultimately studied 9 sites. On this slide, you can see them A, B, C through I. A, B, and C sites are on the Head Brotherhood site of the initial study, and then we expanded to the remaining sites. At the top of the screen, you see the little blue rectangle. That's the existing Ocean View Library. The dividing road between is Brotherhood Way. So from here, we did some initial site analysis, which looked at sort of basic site attributes. This slide shows walkable, transit-connected streets, with the green representing the walkable, more level, less steep connections. The dotted blue are transit lines with the M train, and the 54 and 28R buses. So those are the 9 sites. You can see the Sisterhood Garden, which is a successful community garden at Arch Street in Brotherhood. And then over on Alamany, there's a dog park on that sort of island in between. Distance to transit stops, we evaluated that, and you can see over to the right-hand side on the southeast corner of the site, it's a little more level, and there's access to 2 different transit options there. The arrows represent the distance, and then the little circles represent the stops themselves. And then the nature of this site is that there are steep side streets adjacent to the sites. The orange lines represent the steep side streets. Some of these streets are in excess of 10% grade, whereas a handicap ramp or an accessible ramp for the ADA is 8%. So they're quite steep. So this was a factor for accessibility to the site. And then the high-speed roadways in the area, with Brotherhood Way being a connecting road between the Junipero-Serra and the 280 freeway. Alamany are also an accessibility and safety factor in our evaluation. And then the other thing that we were considering is the OMI neighborhood focus. So the sites above Brotherhood, if you think of Brotherhood as kind of a boundary, form a better connection to the neighborhood. So from here, we went on to establish what we considered desirable site viability criteria, the notion of neighborhood connectivity, safe pedestrian access, accessible paths from transit, existing vehicular infrastructure such as connections to streets, a level building site for cost, and synergy with existing site amenities such as the Sisterhood Garden or the dog park, and within the OMI neighborhood. So these were our 7 criteria by which we evaluated the 9 sites. So this diagram shows you an overall view 6 times of our 9 sites, and the blue being the site that's evaluated. The criteria in the slide underneath, if it's highlighted in blue, it means it met the criteria. If it's in gray, it did not meet the criteria. So option A, B, and C meet most of the criteria, and option D meets all of the criteria. So from there, we did a more detailed study of options A, B, C, and D. Options A, B, and C are on the Head Brotherhood Mini Park site, and all 3 of those options include some amount of vehicular access and site paving, parking, fire department turnarounds, and delivery on site. Site options A and C would both be accessed off of Head Street, and with pedestrian access coming from various locations. And option B would have access off of Brotherhood Way. Option D represents an option where there's no proposed additional vehicular access. It would be off of Orizaba Street. What you're looking at, the blue outline, that is a prototypical library, and the size that we were using is a 20,000 square foot building on 2 stories. So each of those blue outlines is approximately 10,000 square feet. Working with the library, we came up with sort of a sample program, and that program is based on meeting the needs that Kathy discussed earlier, particularly the community room need, teen area, that kind of thing, and that's all in the report. So this is the site recommendation. This is the site we're recommending for further study. And what we have, it's poetically named option D. And it's the only site in the study that has sort of roadway frontage in the neighborhood, at least that's north of Brotherhood Way. It's the most accessible from transit. It's got a relatively level walk up to the M line on Orizaba, and the 54 has 2 stops right adjacent to the proximity of our proposed library. It's the most walkable to Minnie Lovey and to Sheridan School. It's close to site utilities such as sewer, water, power, fire hydrants, that kind of thing. And in terms of landscape design, we worked a lot with our landscape architects at Public Works who did a great job. And the idea is that the building could bookend the site with Sisterhood Garden, which is a successful community garden on the west side. So the idea that in the southeast corner is the library, directly adjacent to the library is a connected landscape to the library. There's rec park amenities nearby, basketball courts, and there's an opportunity to fill this in a sort of a very synergistic way between the Sisterhood Garden and the library. Architecturally, the building would be on a corner. It would be highly visible to pedestrian and vehicular traffic, and it could be an iconic kind of beacon gateway to the community and for the library, because this branch would be kind of a beacon branch at the size that we're proposing. So for those reasons, this is our recommended site for further evaluation. One more time, there we go. So the next step is community meetings in November to get feedback and to make a presentation to the neighborhood. And then we'll work with with city planning and with our environmental specialists in Public Works to see what we need to do, how we can proceed with this from an environmental point of view, so create a roadmap for the next steps, because I think that will be sort of a big hurdle for us. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Andy.
Sure.
And as I alluded to in my opening, the Office of District 10 Supervisor Sofia is here. Supervisor Sofia and his legislative aide, Monica Chinchilla, are here. Supervisor Sofia contributed greatly to the identification of this property along Brotherhood Way, and I'd like to invite Supervisor Sofia to comment on the project.
Excuse me, I would just like to let everybody know that the actual feasibility reports are available at the back of the room.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, City Librarian Lambert. Thank you, commissioners, for taking the time to listen today. We are super excited about this feasibility study. We fully support and recommend the site that's chosen. Very close proximity to public transportation, which we think is very important. It's a flatter part of land, so it'll be accessible, and it can build off of and ignite some more renovation of some of the existing sites that are there and encourage more. We think it's the least imposing proposal. So we really appreciate the speed with which this was done, and we've been working really strongly with the community members, some of whom are here today. They've been waiting for decades for something that would serve their community on this scale. The one thing that I'd like to add is that we believe that this will be a gateway for our district and neighborhood, but also will serve multiple neighborhoods with the size and the scale of this library, so that there's a whole host of schools that are down the street at Brotherhood Way. The Park Merced development that is happening will bring in, thousands of more people. And then there's a whole host of, we have the highest concentration of children and families under the age of 18 and a lot of seniors aging in place. So there's so much need for a facility of this size. We appreciate City Librarian Lambert for working with us, and Public Works for working with us on this, and so all of their time and effort to come up with this in a very measured but facilitated way. So, in so many ways, and I said this last time, this part of town has been dramatically underserved for decades, and probably from this time inception of so many different ways. And so the fact that we would go from the smallest neighborhood library to the largest one in the city, we think sends a really strong message. So we're really, really happy about that. And as we have been in this process, we've worked hand in hand with the mayor and their office to identify the additional funding that might be needed and support the librarian in their effort to ensure that this would be a fully funded project as quickly as possible. So really appreciate you all considering this and moving this process forward as fast as you can. And if there's any questions, or if you all have anything for me, I'm happy to answer any questions. But again, thank you, Michael, for all your hard work, and your team, and Public Works for all their hard work, and for the community members that have driven this and pushed this forward.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Anyone?
So thank you. So what we're going to do now, we're going to move into public comment.
Good.
And then we'll move into our commission discussion. So if you or a member of your staff could stay available, because the commissioners may have questions.
Sure.
For you.
We'll hang out.
Okay.
Thank you. And Monica Chinchilla, who's been guiding this project for me, is here. So she'll be here, but she and I have to go in about 25 minutes. So we'll both be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Public comment on this particular item, please.
Hello, Commissioners. I'm Mark Christensen. I'm Vice President of the Merced Extension Triangle Neighborhood Association, but I'm not speaking with that. I'm speaking as an individual, because we have not presented this. First of all, I want to make a negative comment and then go on to positive things. I'm absolutely shocked and dismayed that Public Works would look at, if we could go to this map here, look at F, E, G, H, and I and think that those were suitable open space to put any structure. We're absolutely opposed to that, many of our neighbors. Having said that, I reluctantly support D, because it is, of all the spaces, the best location for the library, even though it is taking up space on the Brotherhood Way Greenbelt. Having said that, I'm going to suggest a codicil to the resolution supporting a one-time construction of a public library on the Brotherhood Way Greenbelt near the corner of Brotherhood Way and Orizaba Avenue. Set back from Brotherhood Way with the proviso that no other proposal to build any structure on the entire Brotherhood Way Greenbelt from Alamany, Sagamore, Orizaba intersection all the way west to Lake Merced Boulevard. Further, I would hope that District 7 Supervisor Norman Yee and District 11 Supervisor Asha Safai would draft legislation to take to the Board of Supervisors stating that no further construction be built along the Brotherhood Way Greenbelt corridor. This land must remain open space for perpetuity. I do, however, as an individual, support the plan to have it at Section D. Thank you very much.
Further public comment?
Good evening. I'm Cecilia Permanent, and I'm a resident of the area, of the Metna area, which is a triangular area between Brotherhood Way, Alameda, and Junipero Serra. And I do support having a bigger library in the neighborhood, and I think it would definitely be needed, especially on the north side. But I do wonder why it has to be the biggest in the system. Do we really have that many borrowers to sustain the largest library? I'm curious about that because we only got this library 20 years ago, and that happened because Admiral Fund, which everybody knows, contributed $20,000 for the current library. So, and that was sort of a trade-off for the shopping center. So a lot of these deals are definitely done in the back room. And, but I do truly believe in libraries. I was there on Orizaba today, and I tell you right now, that street is a mess. It's two ways. There's buses, there's trucks, there's all sorts of things going up and down that street. So unless you guys do a very intensive traffic review of this site, I don't think it's gonna work. The other problem is you cannot stop on Brotherhood Way. There's no way a mom could stop on Brotherhood Way and let her children out. That would cause all sorts of accidents. It's become a freeway. Let's face it, this is the last sanction of the city where middle income people can afford to live here. And I do believe that we do need a bigger library, but I would vote for site A, B, and C. I think it's closer to the playground. It's also safer, and a lot of other positives would be that it would be on the north side of Brotherhood, which I think is where a lot of the families are, and that is just how I feel about it. And I'm not being negative. I just really think that whoever does the study for the traffic flow needs to look at this area, because it was only 10, 15 years ago a grandfather and his grandson got killed right on Orizaba, crossing Brotherhood Way. So, and since then they have done things to improve that roadway, but the city is just getting faster and faster. And if you want a playground, or not a playground, but a library with children coming in and out, and people hopefully using it if it's going to be the biggest one, we want to make sure it's safe. Thank you.
Further public comment?
Hello, I'm Glen Rogers. I sent you numerous emails. I hope you got a chance to look at some of them. I'm a landscape architect, and I have lived in this area since 1948. The new location for the Ocean View Library is still far away from the M streetcar. Therefore, the renovation of the existing library continues to be my preferred choice. There was no mention about the idea of the existing library being able to have additional floors. That was supposed to be a problematic thing. In transit-rich areas, you can have oftentimes up to 5 to 7 stories. Libraries are still public buildings that need to be available to the most vulnerable of our residences in San Francisco. Although the 54 bus does provide service to the library at this location, the M streetcar is several blocks away and would be preferred, in my opinion. Therefore, the renovation of the existing library continues to be my favorite choice. My second choice is a preferred location for the Ocean View Library would be at Broad Street, near the Engine Company 33, which is still a working fire station. At this location, all important aspects of the Ocean View Library are met. The space is especially large, because one lot is vacant and the building present there is shuttered. It is beside an M streetcar stop, and it's closest to the Minnie and Lovey Ward Recreation Center more than any other location. My biggest concern about the Ocean View Library being located at the Greenbelt is that this would appear to be the beginning of the end for the Greenbelt. The Greenbelt gained its status because the land here originally was a stream providing water to the much larger Lake Merced. Therefore, the soils are problematic for construction. Adding to the problem is the fact the Greenbelt is still an earthquake fault underneath it. For these reasons, the Greenbelt has been created. It wasn't just created because we like open space in District 7. Unfortunately, city officials and the design staff of DPW have learned all this information recently and too late to change their minds about a new site location. Another location where a public structure was built, ignoring existing site conditions, was the Oceanside Water Pollution Control Plant, next to Lake Merced, not too far away from the, this is an important concept.
Thank you. Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Morning. Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Glen Hitachi, and I live on 207 Chester Avenue. I really do like the site at D and fully support the construction of a library there. However, I would like to see the Commission strongly support that the rest of that Brotherhood corridor remain a open and green space, as the previous speaker had said, because of earthquake difficulties and problems with that. It does make it a little dicey. We do have the Sisterhood Gardens there on Arch, and we do have the dog run, and we do have the recreational facilities. I do like the idea that adjacent to the library, that they will incorporate park-like setting and incorporate the recreation areas too. I think that probably is the best use for that entire area there, and I would strongly like to see the Library Commission exhort the Board of Supervisors to keep that area as open space. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment, please?
My name is Mary Harris. I'm president of All My Neighbors in Action, and we're very excited about the possibility of having a new library. I think you know all the reasons why. We've totally outgrown the library that we went to Mayor Willie Brown and asked for in every way. Many people have come and told me that they actually stopped they love the library, but they stopped using it because there's not places to sit and read, there's not the collections that they want. There's just too many things missing that they find in the larger library. So I'd like to get those people back. We support the recommendation of D, and we would like to agree with our neighbors that we would lobby for not having other things built on the Greenbelt, that be one of the conditions going with this commission, the Planning Commission, or whatever has to sign off on it. We agree with our neighbors. We want to get along with Metna. They get along with us, and we try to support each other's projects. And if that's one of their conditions, we would certainly agree with that. Just as I've retired, my husband and I have finally been able to use some of the programs at Ocean View. We recently went to Muir Woods, and we were so excited. And then the last 3 Wednesdays, we did seismic safety, which was totally in tune with today. And we left yesterday with an earthquake prepared case full of stuff in case of an earthquake and stuff. So I didn't want to go away without thanking the Ocean View staff for the wonderful program they do in such a small library. So I look forward to you supporting our larger library. I hope that you will add money. It's because we only got the 8 million, and I'm still upset about the 20 million for Mission and 20 million for Chinatown. I think we should have the equal amount. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Further public comment?
Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. We haven't studied in detail the materials and are not very familiar with the area, but I did want to point some things out, including some historic things. One of the issues with Ocean View was always that the 2 floors were not very useful or usable, that essentially the 2nd floor made it a problem for librarians to supervise what went on upstairs, and I'm glad to see one of the commissioners nodding in agreement. So I'm concerned that the same problems may arise with a 2-story plan, however good the location might be determined to be at lot number D. It's also an ongoing cost, because if you want to use those floors, then you have to have some kind of way to be able to see what's going on or to supervise it, and that is also a concern, ongoing cost, perhaps with personnel at the library. One of the things you've included in the packet and have not mentioned at this meeting is an almost identically named document, 83 pages long, called Ocean View Branch Library Feasibility Report, San Francisco Public Library, October 2019. It doesn't have the exact date today. But there were a number of things that I found very interesting. For example, proximity to other areas of foot traffic, such as commercial areas or parks or things like that. And I'm not clear to what degree this location has taken that into account. Another thing is that there's a map here. There's talk about Vision Zero, the city's supposed attempt to prevent anybody from getting killed in the city through traffic accidents by some certain date. And unfortunately, the city is losing that. The numbers are going up, not down. But in any case, the existing map shows on page, well, it's 2 before 69, I believe, shows San Francisco's high injury network. And there's, within the area, looks like one of the streets that's the border here, looks like that's a high injury network member, which means 75% of the city's severe and fatal traffic injuries occur on just these blue streets, which are 13% of our streets. What I'm concerned with is that when you bring more people in, how much worse is that statistic in that neighborhood going to get when you start having people jumping out of cars and into cars, come walking to that location? How much worse is the danger going to be for the users of the library? Just some issues to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment on this item?
Commissioners, I think it's great that they finally found a place to put our library, and so please approve it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Short and sweet.
Further public comment?
My name is Ruth McGinnis. I have lived within 3 blocks of the proposed site, and I have worked at the Ocean View Library in a previous location, which was near the firehouse, next door to the firehouse, in a very small location. And I travel at least twice a week through this Brotherhood Way Alamany intersection. It is a high-speed intersection. It leads from an outlet off 280, and people use it to get to the Outer Sunset. People use it to get to the houses of worship on Brotherhood Way. And it is it's a very problematic location because people are changing lanes all the time. I've driven it, I've ridden that way, and I've also walked the distance. And I'm concerned about buffers for any possible library there, that traffic not endanger people that are going to the library. Number two, I'm concerned about night use and visibility. There will be visibility from the major streets, but not visibility from the major part of Ocean View where I have lived. There is no good safe transportation except the M, and there is another bus that runs infrequently. And traffic is the one thing that really concerns me. Now, another question is Greenbelt, all the way to Lake Merced. There's an area from Highway 1, which is Unipercera or 19th Avenue, to Lake Merced that is used by houses of worship and has a quite busy ongoing complex being built. And many of us would like to see other houses of worship being put along that street. I fought for transportation along that street for a long time, and we finally got it. The other question is the center for the library right now is way too small. It is just not a good library for use. And the area around the fire station is not very visible. So I support this one with caveats.
Thank you. Further public comment? If you have a comment on this item, you may want to begin to make your way up here. Anyone else?
Oh, I have to watch the time. Okay. I prepared a statement, and I have 3 minutes. My name is Edna James, and I've been on the Library Council for 20 years, ever since the library has been built. So I'm going to say here, whereas the Ocean View Library has been in limbo for 20 years, and including 2 other, the Chinese and Mission Library. Whether this is disparity or not, but the old 3 libraries that belong to the different ethnic communities. Whereas the space is too small for the population it serves due to the increase in children population with addition of child care centers. Whereas the 2 public schools served by the library are presently within walking distance and relatively a safe route. And whereas the community is built on hills with inadequate and poor transportation, because I went to the Transportation Committee the other time and talked about how bad it is. And systems and traffic pattern is just really bad. We cannot get into Arch. One way out and that's it. Arch has been a 2-way street, but it's a 1-way street now. And whereas there's no one entrance into the proposed site, and so I don't think that would be adequate right there. Again, it's dangerous for walking for students, and I'm concerned about ADA. The site does not offer parking, and the community is built on hills and not making it ADA accessible for seniors and disabled children and young adults, 1 parking space. And whereas the west side of Brotherhood Way, the west side, we're on the east side of Brotherhood Way, and they're from Juniper leading to a freeway is heavily impacted with approximately, I didn't count them all, but I'd say at least 10 churches, a house of worship, with plenty of parking, and the other side has newly developed housing and space for entrance. We don't have it on our side, and that's a problem there. Also, therefore, it be resolved that the Library Commission take a second look at this plan and map and go back to the drawing board and consider the impact on Title ADA. Racial disparities exist in San Francisco for 55 years and continue since the Civil Rights Acts and founding of the Human Rights Commission. To develop a plan that is equitable to the community for the African American, Pacific Island, and Asian and Latino community, and not consider a bond for a library for the building until a plan has been developed and implemented on the that remains on the 3 libraries. I'm saying you're already talking about let's introduce a bond. Well, we haven't got through planning for these libraries, and you don't know what you're going to look and see in the Chinese library.
Thank you.
And so that's what I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment on agenda item number 2. Seeing that there's none, we're going to move into our commission discussion on the Ocean View Library Site Feasibility Report. We have both the library personnel as well as personnel from the Public Works Department and Supervisor Sofia as well as his staff is here. And so, commissioners, I invite you to comment or have questions for any of those individuals that are still with us.
I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner.
Supervisor Sofia, while you're here, you said that you made a statement that we are in support. Who is the we there?
The people that spoke after me that said they were in support, and a lot of other community members that I've spoken to over time. I mean, I agree with, there's still, let me just be clear, there's still more work that needs to be done. Ms. Edna talked about access, accessibility, and parking. The plan and the design has not been fleshed out. This is just a feasibility study. Those are really good points. I also want to say to the folks that are talking about the preservation of open space and green space, I fully support that. I also would say let's take a look at our open and public spaces that we utilize and cherish the most, Golden Gate Park, other places. We're talking about a public facility that is going to enhance and build on a public open space, similar to what you have in Golden Gate Park. That's how I'm approaching this. I absolutely agree. We want to preserve as much open space as we can in our facility. So I just wanted to get that on the record. But to your point, there's a significant number of people that we've spoken to since the time of these community meetings and conversations that are in full support of this. They've sent letters, emails. Some of them came and spoke today. You heard they represent organizations, and their organizations have and or will take formal positions, and their membership will as well.
Thank you, but the we isn't the Board of Supervisors.
Oh, no, no, not yet, no. We is me and the mayor.
Okay.
So me and the mayor, but we haven't as a Board of Supervisors. but the Board of Supervisors has not taken a formal position yet.
Okay.
If we need to, we will.
Okay, thank you. I have some more. Can I ask some more questions?
Can we go to it? Is it okay? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, but you said that the lady in the, no, the one behind you with the green shirt. Yeah. Yes, please.
Question public comment.
Oh, I just wanted her to clarify something that she said, because I didn't hear it.
No.
No? No. Well, can I ask Michael?
Yes. Want to ask her clarify or comment? That's
clarify. Fine. Okay. You said, I didn't hear the word you said that you used, but you said that a trust or a foundation or something provided the money for this library 20 years ago. I didn't hear that. I didn't understand that.
Do you want to come to the podium?
The library Ocean View. And maybe there was another one in the neighborhood. Someone said there was one on Broad Street.
Would you like to come to the podium so it could be recorded, please?
So it's my understanding the reason we got Ocean View Library on Randolph was that Emerald Fund contributed $20,000 to the project.
Emerald Fund.
Part of it was because of the housing that went in on Alameda Boulevard. It used to just be a strip mall, and they developed it and put in apartments. So basically, they felt to support the community, they would donate $20,000 to the library on Randolph, and that's how that became
I just wanted to clarify.
Okay, thank you.
Emerald Fund, yeah, that's all.
Oh, well then maybe I'm wrong, sorry.
Okay, it was the Emerald Fund that I didn't hear. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Further discussion among the, Zoe?
No,
Why don't you go, Zoe?
I have a couple of questions. Where did the assumption of 20,000 square feet come from?
That was informed by library staff in considering the network of branch libraries that we currently have. The largest branch is the Chinatown branch, and you know, in considering peer urban libraries, what is the average size of a branch library? San Francisco's branch libraries are relatively small, and an average branch library in many of our surrounding communities is more in the neighborhood of 10 to 20,000 square feet. And in considering the needs in this community and how it would serve the broader Ocean View, Merced Heights, and Ingleside region, we felt that this was really a once-in-a-generation opportunity to put into place the proper infrastructure to account for the current needs and future growth in the population.
Okay, thank you. And this is a discussion, sharing a recommendation, sharing the site feasibility, which the conclusion of which is to recommend site D for a library. These community meetings that we're going to be having, like what exactly is the objective and the agenda of those meetings? Are we going to the public and saying, this is what we're recommending, what do you think? Or is it a more open-ended? Like, I just want to understand exactly what we're asking of the public at those meetings.
These conversations will be jointly facilitated by library staff and staff from Public Works, and it will be a very similar presentation to the one that's occurring tonight at the Library Commission. And the purpose of those community meetings that are slated for November is to secure community input and feedback on the results of the site feasibility report.
Okay. And at what point in time and who decides whether or not we pull the trigger and go forward on Site D?
Library staff recommends that we continue planning and incorporate the community's feedback into our planning efforts. We do intend to submit a budget proposal as part of the FY21-22 budget process to continue building the budget for this project. As Supervisor Sofia mentioned earlier, this is very preliminary. There are still many activities that need to be conducted in order to determine whether or not this site ultimately will be conducive to constructing a regional branch library. But the library management is firmly in support of constructing a new Ocean View branch library, and we intend to continue requesting investment in this project.
Okay. Those are questions, a comment. There's sort of like this decision tree, right? So there's remodel versus build a new one. And it sounds like a lot of folks, there's opinions on both sides, but we heard tonight a lot for the need for a larger site. You can get a larger library either by renovating and adding floors in the new one, but I understand that's physically challenging. So if we want to enlarge the Oceanside branch, it would be a new site and a new building. Then the question is the location of that. That's another decision tree, of which we had a feasibility study here to look at 9, and D came out on top given these criteria. And then the question is how big and how much money, right? So what I'm hearing is this is all sort of wrapped up in terms of our decision making as a body around budgeting for it, which it feels like that's just the money for it, but do we have decisions on actually any of those decision points? Like, we set aside a budget, but like how and when do we weigh in as to remodel new on this site, 20,000 square feet? Like, help me understand as a body where and how and when we're involved in those decisions.
So for clarification this evening, this is a discussion item,
right.
So we welcome your input and feedback on the results of the site feasibility report. We will be coming back to the Library Commission with the results of the community meetings, and we'll share the community's feedback about the site feasibility report. There's still a lot of work that Public Works needs to do. Andy can explain this better than I can, but I understand the next step for Public Works is to engage their regulatory affairs people in their office who will help determine the process for continued planning. Is that accurate, Andy? Yeah. So at this time, there really isn't a decision point or an action required of the Library Commission, but there will be a further discussion and more agenda items on this topic, and ultimately the action for the commission would be evaluating a budget proposal as part of the FY 21-22 budget process.
Okay. And just the hesitation and the concern is sort of, there's like sort of these assumptions of like, yes, we're going to build a new one, we're doing a site feasibility, it's going to be D, we're going to do more research on the feasibility, then we're starting to get more and more of like a commitment and sunk costs into this particular path, you know, without us having any kind of say in it. But you're saying that you're asking for feedback here, like based on what I've heard so far, it sounds very reasonable, it sounds like D, but there's some risks to mitigate around traffic and accessibility. I do want to better understand why 20,000 square feet. It sounds like if our average branch is less than 9,000 square feet, and this was half that size, why are we increasing the size by 4 times? I understand the community's growing and all of that, but I just worry that we're getting in like this, you know, arms race amongst the various branch libraries, and everyone's trying to be bigger and better, and the cost of that. So we didn't talk about the budget here, but I saw the cost numbers in this feasibility study, and they're pretty eye-popping. And I just think of the opportunity cost of, oh, what if we did a 12,000 or 15,000 square foot branch here, you know, where might we use that other 5 or 7 million to help other needs that the library system has? So I'm not saying yes or no, I'm just saying I have a question as to, I need to be convinced why it has to be a 20 million square foot library given the expense.
20,000.
Excuse me, $20 million cost for a 20,000 square foot library.
That's fair, and thank you for that feedback. Admittedly, 20,000 square feet is an aspiration, and it's still yet to be determined what this site could actually accommodate without further review.
Thank you. Further commission comments? Commissioner Wong?
Thank you, everyone, for the discussion. I did want to build off of Commissioner Dunning's comment. I think this particular project is more nuanced because we have the potential to change the entire tenor and tempo of the surrounding area. And so what I'm concerned about on the cost side is like the mechanics of how that all work, right? Like if there is a world in which we can pull $5 million from the building in favor of improving the surrounding area drastically, that could end up doing a lot better for the community than just additional meeting space that may not end up being necessary. So it's something I would think about more. I also think it's more complex, right? Because with every one of these new buildings, like we're not thinking about just 5 or 10 years. We're thinking dozens of years at a time. And so it's really hard for any human to think even 5 years ahead. So now we have to paint this kind of broad picture of what we think 30, 40 years down the road would be, and we don't know, right? Like given the tempo of the city in the last few years, like this area could be very, very, very populous in the coming decades, and you know at that time 20,000 square feet could be necessary. So that's kind of just what I'm weighing, and it's just hard to have like a very strong stance on this, but I do think that so far we've done a tremendous job. I like the fact that we explored so many other options, right? Like in the spirit of doing you know the best work that we can for this community, right? It just deserves that level of investigation. My one question for Andy is there a possibility that Site D ends up being infeasible for one reason or another, given the planning phase, and how real, if so, how real is that possibility?
That's a tough question to answer. It may be that Site D becomes infeasible due.
Can you speak it right into the microphone? Thank you.
It may be that there is some infeasibility uncovered in the environmental review process. I don't really think that will happen. I do think that the concerns expressed by the community are valid, and that needs to be part of, really good due diligence needs to happen with regard to traffic and safety and access to the neighborhood with that site. But I don't really see a hurdle that we won't be able to get over to build a decent library on that site.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wolf.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy and Kathy, for your presentations, and Supervisor for being here today, and everyone's comments. A lot's already been said, but having not really knowing this neighborhood well, but having visited the current branch, I'm very excited about the possibility of something new and something that could be a community builder, because I think that this community is very dispersed, and these roads going through it really divide it, and I think to kind of create a kind of center would be really terrific. I really feel that this is going to require incredible partnerships, and I really hope that we can really engage the Department of Park and Recs to really activate the site. I feel like I understand everyone's concern about the Greenbelt corridor, but I feel like a new building with new activity will only activate that Greenbelt in a very new and fresh way, in a way that I think it's been underutilized, and I think it can then be really utilized in new ways, and I think Park and Recs could really play an important role there. I do have huge concerns about the transportation issues and safety issues. And speaking to Commissioner Dunning's point about the scale and the size, one thing that might be worth considering is imagining for further down the road, 20 years from now, could we envision a building plan that is phased, so that we're looking at something that we can afford now that maybe be 12 to 15,000 square feet, knowing that there could be an expansion done down the road. So I just think that that is something that we should consider as well. So thank you for your very thorough report. It's very useful and exciting what could happen for this community.
Actually, we've ended our public comment at this phase. We're in commission discussion. Commissioner, do you have any more comment?
No.
No. Any other discussion on the commission? Well, I just want to add to my comments. I want to thank both the library personnel and the Department of Public Works. This is the first time we've seen a full feasibility study. I also want to thank the community members that are here today to bear witness to both your concerns and as well as your excitement, that this is the first phase in this process. This is a discussion for us. This is an opportunity for us to learn what the needs are, as well as the challenges. One thing that I will say as a commission president and as someone that has been a lifelong educator is that it's very rare in my 25 years working in educational and recreational environments that administrators, parents, and families look back and say that that they regret that they didn't not build something and also build it to the possibilities in which over time they found that there could have been much more of an investment and made. And so we are definitely tasked and have a responsibility and duty to both listen carefully and to try to make an investment in this community that in many ways will outlive many of the people that are here. And as the city librarian has said, this is going to be a once-in-a-generation opportunity for us. And so we're going to take it with seriousness. We look forward to having more information come back to us. And we just want to thank you for your commitment, because your attendance here lets us know that you care. And your sense of care makes us have a higher sense of commitment to you. So thank you all for being here. Thank you, Supervisor, and thank you all the community members, particularly from this particular community and these districts, for being here. So we're going to move on to item number 3, which is our city librarian's report. And this item is an opportunity for our city librarian to give us information on the recent library activities as well as to make announcements.
Thank you. Thank you, President Wardell. We have a number of reports this evening, and I'm pleased to introduce our first presenter. Brian Weaver is a program manager in our General Collections and Humanities Center on the 3rd floor of the main library. This evening, he will be presenting about Family History Month and the library's genealogy services.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. As Michael said, I'm Brian Weaver, Program Manager of the General Collections and Humanities Center here at the main library on the 3rd floor. And today I'm going to talk about the Innovation Fellowship for which I applied and was approved back in 2017 to coordinate genealogy services at the main library and system-wide. But first, I would like to mention that it is coincidentally appropriate that I am speaking to you today because about my fellowship, because it is Family History Month at the main library, or at least I've declared it as such. Family History Month is not officially observed by the federal government, but the U.S. Senate designated the month of October in the years 2001, 2003, and 2005 as National Family History Month, pardon me, and asked the President in those years to issue a proclamation calling upon the people of the United States to observe the month with appropriate ceremonies and activities. Sadly, there was never a presidential proclamation in any of those years, but many organizations and institutions throughout the country still do declare and celebrate October as Family History Month. Okay, so why did I get so interested in genealogy and think that coordination of services was needed? Well, it started because we had a librarian in our department, the General Collections and Humanities Center, who was very knowledgeable about genealogy and was our go-to person whenever patrons asked questions that the rest of us could not answer. And when she retired about 3 years ago, we were suddenly without anyone to whom we could direct the patrons with some of their more involved genealogy questions. It struck me then that we had lost more than a veteran librarian. We had lost all our knowledge about a subject we get asked about regularly. Secondly, though the library has numerous resources genealogists can use, they are spread throughout the building and therefore difficult to navigate for patrons and equally difficult for staff to direct the patrons. For example, books on how to do family history are on the 3rd floor. Newspapers and city directories are on the 5th floor. San Francisco History Center with all its resources is on the 6th floor. And additionally, there are all the online resources we provide access to, like Ancestry Library Edition, Heritage Quest Online, San Francisco Chronicle Historical, and now Fold 3 with its millions of military records, and the San Francisco Examiner Historical Database. Furthermore, I did some research and found that many other major urban libraries around the country have actual genealogy departments and web pages on their websites describing their collections. And in some cases, they even have designated genealogy librarians. So I was happy when Peter Wiley, Friends of San Francisco Public Library, and Michael Lambert approved my Innovation Fellowship proposal. And I was even happier when they permitted me to attend the Institute of Genealogy and Historical Research's annual week-long Educational Institute for Genealogists, which was held at the University of Georgia campus in Athens. And it differs from a genealogy conference in that attendees register for one course for the entire week, and thus allowing them to delve into a specific topic or methodology more deeply than what a conference might allow. I took the introductory course, which they called Methods and Sources, but you can see from the syllabus that the course was quite extensive. I refer to it as the Genealogy Boot Camp. Because as you can see from the itinerary, the schedule ran Monday through Friday. It was 8:30 to 5. There were optional evening sessions, and by the end of the week I was totally exhausted. But I learned a lot, and the knowledge I gained instilled in me the confidence to come back to the library and begin my work figuring out how to better coordinate our genealogy services, as well as offer programming and reach out to local genealogy organizations and institutions. All right, so what did I accomplish? I started off by meeting with other department managers in the main library, managers of the departments with resources genealogists use, like the Magazines and Newspaper Center, the Government Information Center, the San Francisco History Center, to get their input on how the library can better coordinate our services, and also to learn about the resources that they have that genealogists use. I created a tally sheet at the General Collections Reference Desk to see how many genealogy questions we were receiving and what the nature of the questions were. I met and partnered with a number of local organizations and individuals to offer programming for our patrons that I could not otherwise do myself. And on a few occasions, I went out to those locations and talked about the resources that we have at the library. I created a genealogy resources at the main library pamphlet and a genealogy resources at the library webpage to make it easier for both patrons and staff to navigate our resources. I established the staff genealogy resource group, which consists of librarians who are knowledgeable about genealogy and are willing to help other librarians to help patrons. And there's now a StaffNet page that lists the members' names and contact info, and in addition to helping staff to help patrons with genealogy questions, we also share information with each other about the different types of questions we receive, how we answered those questions, the programs we're doing, helpful resources that we might not have known about. With this group, it is my hope that institutional knowledge is shared and not just in the hands of one or in the mind of one individual. As staff have come to know that there is a librarian who's knowledgeable about genealogy, I've had numerous questions referred to me, and I have communicated with patrons by phone and email about their inquiries. I provided a broad range of programming, partnering with the African American Genealogical Society of Northern California, the San Francisco African American Historical and Cultural Society, the California Genealogical Society, the Sutro Library over at SF State, and individual genealogists like Grant Dinn, Jeannie Lowe, Stephen P. Morse. As well as I've hosted a number of beginning genealogy programs myself at the main library, and I've gone out to a number of branches and even the Tech Mobile. And we now have a San Francisco genealogy group led by a woman from the California Genealogical Society, which meets on the second Saturday of the month up on the 3rd floor. Okay, so what did I learn from all this work? First of all, regarding the tally sheet I created and kept at the General Collections Reference Desk during the period of July 2017 to January 2019, we received 125 questions related to genealogy, which comes out to about 1 or 2 questions a week. Now, this may not sound like a lot, but this is just one desk at the main library. I was not tallying, how many questions were asked at the Magazines and Newspaper Center, or the San Francisco History Center, or the Information Services Desk on the 1st floor. And also, some of these questions are quite involved and take some time to answer. Secondly, I have listed all the programs I've done. It's a lot. Well, not all me, but some of them are led by others. And I found that most of the programs are well attended. Over the 2-year period I've been offering classes, I've had a pretty steady attendance of averaging 12 people per program. So there is definitely ongoing interest in the subject and in different aspects of genealogy, like African American genealogy, Asian American genealogy, and DNA and genealogy. I have found that other librarians are appreciative of the Genealogy Resources webpage and the fact that they can refer patrons to someone who is knowledgeable about genealogy. And patrons actually sometimes ask, where is our genealogy department, or if there's a genealogy librarian in the building. Finally, looking ahead, I plan to continue declaring that October is Family History Month at the main library, and I've already begun making plans with another member of our staff genealogy resource group about next year's Family History Month. The programs I organized for this month went well, with 38 people coming out to hear Stephen Morse talk about DNA and genealogy, 9 people attending the San Francisco Genealogy Group meeting, and 10 people learning about Hispanic genealogy at a class yesterday with Lucy Jennings Sweeney. I will be continuing to offer branches with workshops at branches, with a couple already planned at Ortega Branch and Noe Valley Branch. And the San Francisco Genealogy Group has requested an extra hour for their meetings and to meet January through November instead of ending in October, because the regular attendees to these meetings would like more time to discuss and learn about family history research. And the leader of the group, Sandra Huber, wanted me to tell you when she heard I was going to speak to you all at the Library Commission meeting about my work. She said, be sure to mention, not only do we have classes, but we use all sources available at SFPL. For instance, after the last meeting, I showed attendees how to find pictures of houses their San Francisco ancestors lived in, using the city assessor's photo collection in the history room, and how to find enumeration district numbers and search the census by blocks using the SF block books and print maps also in the history room. Lastly, I'll mention that the library recently added Fold 3 to its collection of databases we provide access to. Fold 3 is used by genealogists because it contains millions of military records. And I was asked to write a brief article about the database for our November at the Library newsletter to correspond with Veterans Day in November. Thank you very much, Commissioners, and I appreciate this opportunity to talk to you about my work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Happy Family History Month. Our next presenter is Tom Fortin, the Chief of the Main Library. He's going to be presenting on a new pilot service initiative called Toy Time.
So now I get to make a Monty Python joke, so for something completely different. Now we'll turn to Toy Time. So thank you, Commissioners. My name is Tom Fortin, Chief of the Main Library, and I wanted to share some information about a pilot project that we're testing at the Main Library, and it's essentially a toy lending library. We did a soft launch of the Toy Time Toy Lending Library back in, oh, thank you, Sue, for passing that around. Yeah, you see one of the toys being passed around. We started this as a soft launch in September, and we're testing all the workflows on this to make sure that it can be successful. This is an idea that was brought to the Public Services team, which is a management group, back in early spring or late last winter. So we've been working on developing this pilot, and now we have it in place. And of course, this is not just a project of the Main Library. Nearly every division has had some input on this, and I appreciate all their assistance. But I do want to call out Katrin Rye-Mueller, who is the first floor manager, and she's in the back. And she's been instrumental in helping me to figure out workflows on a toy lending library. So, toys at the library. Well, of course, this is nothing new, right? You probably all know that many of our libraries have play spaces, and that play time is a general practice after story time. Our children's librarians are very adept at making sure that there's play in the library. And play is important because there's a ton of research giving evidence to the thought that access to early learning toys advances language, cognitive, social, and emotional skills at the age when the most brain development occurs, between 1 and 3. We decided to model our toy library on the toy lending library that's already established at the Oakland Public Library. So much of the practices that we put into place are just lifted from their successful project, which is at every branch library in Oakland. And they've been doing circulating toys now for about 5 years or so. But the goal is to provide a variety of early learning toys for children ages 1 to 3. And the Main makes sense because we serve the Tenderloin. We're the Tenderloin branch, and we want to serve and reach out to community families in the Tenderloin. So providing access to early learning toys helps a couple different ways. It helps us to address equity issues in the community and helps to set up kids for success in the Tenderloin. And of course, it's green, right? Reusing toys instead of everyone buying toys repeatedly, reducing consumption is important, so there's that. And then why at the Main? Again, I just wanted to spend a little bit of time just focusing on the Main as the pilot location. For obvious reasons, to test a concept, the Main has extra space to try to figure these things out and staffing to give it a try. But we raised our hand to volunteer the Main as a pilot location primarily because we serve the Tenderloin, which is an economically disadvantaged community. We wanted to reach out to the families in the Tenderloin. We wanted to make sure that they had this experience in the Children's Center, and it drives positive engagement at the main library. So we're focusing on bringing families to the main library, not only so that they can experience the toys, of course, but also to experience the rest of the building, maybe do family history. And then to give you a sense of how it works, as a test, what we're checking out is, in the soft launch anyway, where the children's librarians are talking about the toy lending library, both after story times and at the desk when they engage with patrons. We're doing some local marketing just in the space. But basically, patrons will check in with staff. They'll ask to place a hold on a toy of their choice. We have about 15 different types of toys, and right now we have about 20 items in each set of toys. So we have quite a large selection. Patrons, again, they check in with staff. Staff places the hold on the item of choice. Patrons will be notified when the toy is ready for pickup. They pick up the toys at the holds desk. Toys are enjoyed with and played with at the home. Then when they're returned to the desk, they're returned to the circulation desk. And then we are working with our volunteer coordinator to have volunteers clean the toys so that they're ready for the next circulation. And then looking at the pilot and how we can measure success, we did check in with Randy McClure and his team in research strategies and analytics. So some of the things that we'll be assessing will be just, anecdotally, I'll be checking in with staff at 3 months and 6 months in the children's room to see how things are going, see what the interest is like with the families in the Tenderloin. But we will also check in, and I can share that information at our public services team meetings. Of course, we'll look at circulation stats. We'll run reports on how long toys are staying checked out to get a sense of how the interest in them. We'll look at what toys are the favorites, which toys are not selected. We'll also monitor attrition or loss rates, and for those toys that are missing pieces, we'll have to withdraw them. We'll look at the typical life of a toy. How long does the toy last? Are toys coming back broken, etc. But I think with working with RSA, we can also try to calculate a typical cost savings for families. I understand, I don't have children myself, but I understand from families that have young children that to try to buy these toys, a lot of times you might spend effort at buying a toy and then the child plays with it for like 3 days, and then you want to get a new toy for the child. The library is a great place to come and experiment with a bunch of different toys and give the child lots of learning experiences. The other thing is we can probably calculate an environmental count, working with the RSA staff again, and impact on the environment by, again, reducing consumption. And then with success, then we would try to plan for budgets for new toys and replacements in the coming cycles. So all in all, toy time. Oh, there's some happy customers there on the left with toys ready to go, enjoy at home. It's been a fun project that explores adding a new format to the library's offering, and it helps families here that use the main library. And we're testing concept for further exploration, maybe as a system-wide resource. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Finally, I would just like to report out on last night's One City, One Book program. We had Tommy Orange, and it drew the largest attendance we've ever witnessed for a One City, One Book event. The program was moderated by the San Francisco Poet Laureate Kim Shook. Sadly, we had some technical difficulties in the overflow room in the Latino Hispanic room with the audio not working. But for those patrons who were unable to participate, there is another opportunity slated for November 1st. It will be at the Oakland Museum of California at 6:30 p.m. Tommy Orange will be in conversation with Oakland's 2019 Youth Poet Laureate Samuel Getachew. I want to thank our Members of the Library Commission who are on the One City, One Book Selection Committee, Vice President Susan Mall and Commissioner Connie Wolf, thank you for your help in making this year's selection. I also want to commend the library staff, Michelle Jeffers, our Chief of Community Programs and Partnerships, Alejandro Gallegos, Denise Schmidt, and Anissa Malady. I do not see them. I also want to acknowledge the newest member of our team, our new Director of Communications, Kate Patterson. She was at the event yesterday evening, and she is in the Community Programs and Partnerships Division. We stole Kate from the Arts Commission, so welcome aboard, Kate. It's great to have you joining our team. And that concludes our City Librarians Report.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to open it up to public comment, please.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Wendy. This is my first time before the commission, and I wanted to make a comment about 2 days ago, the library had ended the Teched Out program, and I'm kind of disappointed because it has been a big part of myself and my husband's internet access, and I'm wondering about what why this program has been discontinued. I can guess that probably some of the equipment might not have been returned and stuff like that, but I was wondering if there was a way to mitigate some of the costs associated with this. The other thing is because there's virtually no notices anywhere that this program was discontinuing, and I don't know how many people had used this program, and maybe a better way to have sunsetted the program would have been to help people get onto other ways of having internet access, at least in the homes or whatever. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment? Further public comment?
Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. Thank you for the presentations. I do have some comments. The toy lending program, which was not announced in advance or discussed in advance at the Library Commission, is another launch of something that other libraries apparently have, and this library had a tool lending program which eventually died an ignominious death, even though it was modeled on another East Bay library, Berkeley, which I believe still has the tool lending library. I have some questions about, a number of questions about safety and about access and so on. Who's coordinating this program? Who is deciding what toys to include or not include? I think that's extremely important. How do people know what toys are available? Is there going to be a catalog? Is there going to be a browsing area where you can look and see what the toys are? Certainly that's a good way of finding books you're interested in, but I don't know quite how that would work. Cleaning toys after use by volunteers. I think you might want to rethink that and get it professionally done. It seems to me there are health issues right there. And I think there are some safety issues as well. Lead in the paint with toys, sharp objects, tiny objects. There's a whole range of ways in which people can get injured with toys, and I would certainly be concerned about how the library is going to select as well as warn people or help them to use things safely. When it comes to genealogy, I'm glad that I don't have to go to the Mormon Church as my first stop. And I was thinking that that's where I normally would think of genies, is the Mormon Church or the story of Aladdin. The library agenda says this is the opportunity for the city librarian to report on recent library activities and to make announcements. I've already pointed out some things that are not in the library, city librarian's report. The removal of print mailed notices, which has never had a justification that I can see, nor any process. I'd be glad to share with you our Library Users Association query as to whether anybody was asked, among particularly patrons, what outreach had been done to patrons with regard to this loss of a very important and long-standing service, and the answer from Mr. Lambert, the city librarian, was none. The suicide, the Maya Angelou Art Project, the RFID implementation, and new computers. None of that is in the report, and I wish it were. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment on this item? Seeing that there's none, we're going to move into our commission discussion on the city librarian's report. Commissioners, we had 3 presentations: the Family History Month and Genealogy Services, the Toy Lending Library, and the One City, One Book. Are there any questions and or comments about any of those items? Commissioner Wolf.
Just a few comments. First of all, Brian, thank you very much for your presentation. I think it's great that the library provides professional development staff opportunities, and I just hope that we continue to do that, and it's a wonderful gift that we all benefit from. So thanks for investing in professional staff development. I also want to acknowledge that the Toy Lending Library, I always really appreciate the kind of creative thinking and development of new programs that also have a very strong ongoing assessment tool and measuring success to make sure that it's actually meeting expectations. So I look forward to hearing how it goes. It's great that our sister librarian across the Bay has had a successful program that we can learn from. I also just want to say that the One City, One Book was just so wonderfully managed last night by the staff, and I just want to thank them for handling that, the overflow crowd and the whole experience and the whole event. So thank you for that. And finally, I just want to say I'm just delighted that Kate Patterson has joined the staff here at the San Francisco Public Library. I've had a chance to work with Kate in the past, and she is just a fantastic person and is going to bring great things. And so we're very fortunate that you have joined the team here. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Dunning.
I just had a question, should we have attrition of toys, so to speak, like if they aren't returned or not returned completely or damaged or whatever. Is this covered at all in our fines? I know we eliminated fines, but the fees policy, is that, like, how do we, if at all?
Sure. So, of course, we don't have fines any longer.
Right. Fees.
But in terms of the fees for lost items, again, we wanted to make the pilot as engaging as possible for as many families as possible,
Yeah,
particularly
absolutely.
here in the Tenderloin. So we put a small value onto the toys of 1 cent so that if they're not returned, it's not a problem for a family to do the lost fees items.
Yeah, and I'm not advocating for them at the moment. I'm just wondering whether that's covered, because I know our fee structure has very specifics, like a computer is this and that. So I would see that if we ended up expanding this program, that we would need to amend the fee program to make sure that that's covered somewhere somehow. Either
Right.
saying explicitly that we're not going to charge fees, or what is it?
Right,
categorized
thank
as?
you. And I agree that we'd have to figure that out if we were to.
But it
implement.
sounds like an amazing program. I'm super excited about that, because you're right. Like, the kid loses interest after a couple of months and
Hours.
also childless, so I don't know this, but yeah. So I'm excited about it. Thank you.
Commissioner Mal.
I echo Commissioner Wolf's comments about Kate Patterson, and I'm thrilled that you're going to join the team here. As a grandmother, I am very excited about this toy rental. I hope it's for all community members. And hopefully, if it's successful, it will go beyond 3 years old. So I know that just anecdotally, my own children, there's like an app or a rental program or something. So they've paid to have toys delivered somewhere so that their kids, when they get to where they're going, there's new toys for them to play with. So I think it's wonderful that this is going to be part of the public library.
Commissioner Lee.
A couple of questions. I like these new programs addressing and getting more engagement. On the genealogy one, I'm just curious. This is a start, so to speak. At what point in time would this genealogy service be extended to cover the migrants? Because the migrant one are the one that quite often they can come here and then they will forget about their ancestry altogether because the parents just want to have them assimilated to the to be an American so fast.
Yeah. Well, we have had a couple programs, the Chinese American genealogy with Jeannie Lowe, and Asian American genealogy, and she, and then the one yesterday, the Hispanic genealogy. So all three of those instructors talked about, going. Well, first of all, researching as far back here as you can, and then, how to go back to whatever particular country you're from and research those records. So, yeah, obviously that would be difficult for me to do, or for, if you don't speak the language of that country. But yeah, so there are different ways to do it. It depends on the country, and depends on how long the person has been here and how much information they have about their family and their parents and that sort of thing. So
am I hearing that it actually exists for some of that you mentioned, a few countries? I mean, take the case of Philippines.
Yeah, I mean, it's, each country is different, and it just sort of depends. But yeah, I mean, I would like to broaden the types of programs that we do. I started a couple of years ago and have done a few programs for different types of different people from different places. But there are so many. It's true.
This is great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have another one that I like to comment on. Is about I see that after check-in, volunteers will clean the toys. I'm just wondering if you can share the protocol of cleaning so that not only the kids will be protected, but as well the volunteers as well. Because we know as parents, we get a lot from our kids going to school, they come back and we get sick.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the question. And again, we're mostly following the model that was established at Oakland Public Library. So for instance, we're using Benefect, which is a green non-toxic cleaner that they've been using for years successfully. So we're following that protocol. But then working with Fran Matthew, who is our volunteer coordinator, she's been great, and she's developed a highly articulated process for cleaning the toys, where the volunteers are wearing an apron, and they're also wearing gloves when they do the cleaning with Benefect.
Thank you for sharing. That addresses a comment from the floor that says that, and I noticed that you have it, you thought through all from the beginning in the cycle. So I appreciate that.
Right. I just want to thank you, both Brian, Tom, and Michael, for your reports this evening. So we're going to move on to item number 4, which is approval of the minutes for September 19th, 2019. And this requires action from the commission. And we're going to call a public comment, please.
Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. There were at least 3 mentions at 3 different points where the public comments that are shown here are very seriously deficient. And the 3 points in particular are where I, at 3 different points, said that the American Civil Liberties of Union of Northern California and the Electronic Frontier Foundation have strongly opposed and continue to strongly oppose implementation of RFID. That was completely omitted in at least 3 places. And I think that goes to your rewriting of history with these minutes, and you're not following what you're supposed to do, which is to summarize people's comments. Under general public comment, it says on the 3rd line, he said he has been advocating fine-free for several years. I said we, Library Users Association, so please don't take away our self-designation. There's a whole range of things that were left out here. We said it was a step in the good direction, but not all that the library can and should do, and that is to look at fees, which hurt people in the same ways that fines do. I mentioned that there was documentation listed on the agenda that did not exist. And that's why the document labeling in the agenda and the explanatory document listings need to be very explicit in how they are described. The comment with respect to RFID included mention of ACLU and EFF in agenda item 1 and in agenda item number 2 and in agenda item, a subsequent agenda item that I'll get to in a minute. All of those references have been omitted where they should have been in, and those are important institutions and serious ones that have objected to RFID installation here. I'll stick with that. I would like you to correct that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Commissioners, we have the September 19th, 2019 minutes before us. Is there any discussion on these minutes?
Move to approve the minutes as given.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes. We have a second. Any additional discussion? Okay, hearing none, I call the question. All those in favor to approve the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The minutes for September 19th are approved as they are. The last item is our adjournment, and we'll call our final public comment.
Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. In addition to not doing your job with respect to summarizing people's public comments, I have said this before, you're not doing your job if you don't insist that you get a chance, each one of you has a chance on an agenda item at or near the end of the meeting, every meeting, to say what items you would like on future agendas, what you would like to have discussed or acted upon. You've had that in the past, other bodies have that. It's your opportunity to represent the citizens of San Francisco and to speak for what you think the library should be discussing or taking action on. And to omit that is to cheat the public that you are supposed to be serving, and to frankly make a mockery of your claims about being the most democratic institution in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment?
Edna James, OMI Community Action Organization, and a member of the Library Council. I just want to say that these 3 libraries have waited 20 years for you to do something about them. And I'm going to speak for all 3 right now, and I might not have their permission, but take your time. Don't rush with this. Let's look at this carefully and see what really needs to be done. Because to me, while you're planning for a bond, we don't know what will be needed with the Chinese library. It may be extra construction costs, and I'm just saying take time and at least give us 5 years to get it started and see that you don't have any problems. But I think the communities deserve that, and to rush this and say we're going to start building on pass a bond, I think you're cheating these 3 libraries in terms of what needs to be done with them. And I thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? This meeting is adjourned.